And I pulled over on the side of the road and he just sort of looked at me and was like, "What are you doing?" And I just got out of the car and walked around to the passenger side. And um, I said, "You have to drive." And he was like, "Why?" And I said, "Because if I keep driving, I already know the bridge. I'm going to drive this car off." Um, and even all these years later, it makes me super emotional because I'm like, how do you get to that point? Um, like there has to be so many things that lead you to this point where you think the only answer is death. And around my birthday last year, I started having all of those thoughts again.
Are you going through life blind? This is Eyes Wide Open with Nick Thompson. On this podcast, we share knowledge and stories that build human connection while elevating stigmatized societal issues such as mental health, holistic wellness, culture, free speech, and more. All to ensure we show up in the world with our eyes wide open. Welcome to another episode of Eyes Wide Open. Our guest today is Kristy Edwards, and Kristy is passionate about total home organization and giving back to her community. She's a public speaker and the founder of Neatly Balanced, which is a company dedicated to helping others clear out clutter, organize their living spaces, and then help them donate those extra items to charity. Kristy, thanks for coming on. Wait a minute, are you my second? You're my second or third two-time guest. I think you're my third, actually, two-time guest.
Well, third time's the charm. So
Third time's a charm. Third time's a charm. So, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me back.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. When we were chatting the other day, you had a new, I think I described it as a new character arc. So,
Yeah.
it's yeah, we'll talk about all that. I think there's a lot there that you can share that's really going to be relatable and relevant to a lot of people.
Yeah.
So, I know that we talked about this last time, but since it's been a year, at least a year and a half now,
Yeah.
um, I have a lot of new listeners since then. So my favorite question to ask people is, what did you want to be when you were a little kid, and how did that lead you to where you are now?
I just always wanted to be, I think, an entertainer when I was little. I mean, my family teases me about it now, but when I was 4 and 5 years old, I would run up to people because I have a younger sister who's 4 years younger, and when people would come to see her, I would jump in front of the video camera or something and be like, "Do you want me to sing you a song? I can dance. Do you want to hear a story? I
Oh
can tell
my
a joke."
gosh.
Like, yeah. So I was always just kind of out for attention and out to make people laugh, and always wanted to make people feel good about themselves. So I think just sort of anything that would give me a chance to have a stage and perform and talk and share all the things um, was always something I thought I wanted to be. But my sister and I think I even told the story the first time I was on, but when we were little girls, we used to play secretary. And I thought
Hmm.
that sounded like the coolest job in the whole world. And I didn't realize at the time that it was just like an entry level, job. But I was always like, when I grow up, I'm going to
Doesn't
be a
have to be.
secretary. It's true. It doesn't have to be. But yeah, people would be like, "What do you want to be?" And, I was always like, "I want to be a secretary. And I just want to take notes and answer the phone all day." It just sounded so glamorous. So,
Hey, I mean, to each their own. Now you're doing probably a little bit of both of those things with the work you do now, with
yeah.
speaking and interviews, and then helping people declutter their life.
Yes, it's a lot. And yes, especially in the organizing realm, when we're organizing with people, sometimes I do feel a little bit like an entertainer because I have to like stand on my head to get them to get rid of certain things or to convince them that, that sweater is from the 70s and it's never going to be in style again. And so,
No,
yeah,
you know that sweater is going to be in style again at some
it
point.
probably, honestly, it probably will be. But yeah, there's been a few things that I had to kind of be like, no, we know that needs to go. But
What is that
it's
like?
funny.
Like
I think by the,
what? Oh, go ahead.
sorry. No, I
No,
was just gonna say
go ahead.
by the time people contact us to come, they're pretty desperate and just like completely overwhelmed. So we really don't have to fight and argue too much with our clients. They're usually ready to
Oh,
let things go.
okay. I was going to ask, and I'm still going to ask, what's the like biggest fight you've had over an item and getting rid of it?
Honestly, I really haven't had too many fights. I mean, again, most people are just, if anything, it's more people say, just burn the house down and start over. Like, I'm sick of everything. I don't want anything. Just take it all. I mean, we hear that more than we hear, I don't want to let this go. So,
Oh, interesting.
yeah, I've had to be like, no, it'll be okay. It's fine. You don't have to let
I
go
mean,
of everything.
That's definitely relatable, though. I mean, there's sometimes where I'm like, because I do a spring cleaning and a fall cleaning, or
Me
sometimes it's
too.
closer to like of my closet, and sometimes I'm just like, I really would rather just start over than go through every piece of clothing here. And
Right.
it's just clothes, but yeah, it's
It can become a lot
yeah.
for
What is
sure.
your so for to give people a little background, and I'm gonna put the first episode from like a year and a half ago in the show notes as well. But
Awesome.
I want to get the cliff notes on how you started Neatly Balanced, what your backstory is for those who haven't heard it before. But after that, I want to talk more about how you have evolved over the last few months, both you as a person and then also Neatly Balanced, because you've had some pretty big changes. But first, what's your origin story? How did you start Neatly Balanced? What was your motivation?
Yeah, so it goes back to losing my dad to cancer in 2010. We found out in January of 2010 he had stage 4 colon cancer that very quickly spread, and 4 months later he died. So it all happened super fast. He was very healthy. We never saw anything coming. And so, that just rocked my whole family to the core. My mom and dad were married for like 40 something years before he died. My sister and I, we were all a very tight knit, close family. And about a year after his death, my mom's church took a missions trip to Honduras, to a very remote village. And the whole purpose of the trip was to build a chapel where the people in that village would have a place of worship. And we were not originally planning to go on the trip.
Oh, that's okay.
That um, a man in the congregation had requested that this chapel be named in memory of my dad. So when we found that out, we were just like, oh my gosh, we have to be there. We have to go to this. We can't miss this. So we went, and we spent 5 days building the chapel. And then it was like a day of travel to get there, a day of travel to come home. And we just witnessed complete poverty. I had grown up very blessed and had everything I ever wanted and most things I needed. And we just witnessed people that had no shoes. Some of these kids were coming and they had no pants on. They were just in like oversized t-shirts. The people that the village basically gave us their food, and it was rice and beans. We ate rice and beans and plantains every day, every meal for 5 days. And it was just, again, it was just a world I had never realized actually existed. And the kind of culmination of that whole week was on the very last day, we went to a village to kind of get souvenirs to bring home. And I was just hungry and wanted something besides rice and beans. And so I found a bakery and went in to get just like some bread or a muffin or something. And the lady who was running the bakery found out I was an American, and she just handed me her baby and spoke in Spanish to tell me she was giving me her baby and wanted me to take her child back to America. And, at the time, I was like 28 years old and I was still wrecked and completely just like, I mean, I sobbed for 5 hours all the way back to the airport. But I think looking back on that now, and, at 41 versus 28, like it makes me emotional every time I talk about it, because I don't have kids, but my husband and I have 7 nieces and nephews between the two of us. But my sister's daughter is the only grandchild on my mom's side of the family. And I mean, I would die for any of my nieces and nephews, but I mean, her especially, she's the only one on my side of the family. So she's very spoiled, and I would just dote on her every time I'm around her. And so I constantly think of her, and I'm just like, if someone tried to take her away, and send her to another country, and I knew I would never see her again, I just can't fathom that. And that was this woman's child. So, that just put everything in a whole new perspective for me. And I came home from that trip and was just like, Americans are spoiled and entitled and we're horrible humans and I'm going to change the world. And immediately sort of began living this minimalistic lifestyle of like, I'm never going shopping again. I'm not going to buy anything brand new. And we can live off things that are secondhand just as well as we can live off of things that are expensive and, Pottery Barn. And just started, the people I was nannying for at the time, I was just like, hey, when your kids outgrow clothes and when they don't play with their toys anymore, can I take them and give them to people who don't have anything? And just started researching nonprofits and basically started volunteering at a bunch of nonprofits here in Nashville, and just did that for about 10 years. And then I started my business and named it Neatly Balanced in March of 2020, coincidentally, right
Perfect
before
timing.
COVID. Um, that was a learning experience. But yeah, I just, I knew I wanted to do something to give back. And so I sort of blended my passion for living more minimally and also being a little bit OCD with my things and just started going into people's homes and organizing. And the whole focus was, hey, we'll make it nice and pretty, but can we also remove things that you're not wearing or that your kids aren't playing with? And we'll donate them on your behalf to organizations we work with, we vetted, that trust us, and we trust them to actually do the work they say they're doing. So we sort of take everybody's things for them and then we send them donation receipts. So the whole thing ends up being a tax write off. That's like our business in a nutshell.
Yeah, which is good. And I actually love the fact that you vet these
Yeah.
nonprofits too, because one thing I've learned in nonprofit work professionally, especially, and with my nonprofit a little bit, is that where the money goes is very interesting. It's like follow the money because you
Right.
have some of these organizations that spend most of their money on overhead and very little like into the program, and sometimes it's not even what you think it is. So
Yeah.
it's good that you did that and you have reputable organizations that people can trust and then trust you as well with their stuff.
Yeah. And that is, to your point, that's very true. And that's important to us as well. And every single organization that we work with consistently grows and is consistently, growing to help more people and just expanding their space and doing more and more outreach in the community. And that's, like you said, I sort of follow the money. And I'm like, if nothing is changing and you're staying the same, that money's going somewhere. So somebody's just pocketing it. If you're not building a bigger facility, you're not doing more outreach programs, and you're not offering help to more people, like, why are you not? So yeah, it's very important to us to sort of work with and vet these places before we start taking people's things to them and handing it off. So
Yeah. And when we chatted, I mean, we've chatted, but when we chatted last on the podcast, it was doing really well. You came on my podcast. I had seen you on I forget what channel it was. Was it channel 2 or 5? You were on the news, the local
yeah,
news,
so
right?
I've been on channel 2, 4, and 5 here in Nashville. All the local stations have featured stories on us, and I've lost track. I think it's around 10 to 12 podcasts at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been amazing just to watch the interest and the people that are willing to put their names out there as affiliates of ours and people that support us. It's been overwhelming in the greatest of ways. It's very humbling.
Yeah, it is. And I think the work you do is really good. And I know that, clutter I hate clutter. So
Yeah.
I have a little on my desk, which is probably the only place that I'm like kind of okay with having it sometimes. But
Sure.
I think I like clean space. Everything has some place that it's supposed to be, all that stuff. But the work that you do with people, like what are some of the, I mean, obviously there's the results, right? Like you can see a decluttered place, but like what are some of the benefits that people say to you, or do they ever reach out to you after you've helped them, down the road and thank you, or how it's improved their life or the impact that it's had on their life?
Yes, we've heard from almost every client we've ever worked with. Most of them send us testimonials that we're able to use on social media. Most of them have called us to come back multiple times.
I was going to
Almost
ask
all of
that.
Yeah, almost all of them use us for another service we offer, which is called porch pickups. So if you don't have the budget or the need for us to pay us and hire us to come in for organizing services, but I mean, who doesn't have clutter and who doesn't have clothes and toys you don't use anymore? So we have a service called porch pickups where clients can contact us, and it's obviously just for people here local to Nashville, but they can call us and schedule a porch pickup. And we send them a Venmo request. They pay the fee, and then they just leave their stuff by their garage or on their porch. It's completely contactless, and we'll go by, pick up their things, still sort it, separate it, and donate it, and then email donation receipts after everything has been taken. So yeah, we stay really busy with all of that. It's become a full-time job now.
Yeah. Well, that leads me to where I kind of wanted to dive into a little bit. So, on paper and in your story, everything was going great. You were growing your business, you were helping people, you were able to combine your passion of helping others, giving back to the charities and giving back to your community. You're making headway on podcasts, you're on news stations. What was going on behind the scenes as you continued to grow the success of Neatly Balanced?
A lot of turmoil, and anxiety and depression and going back to things I had dealt with in high school and college, which was basically suicidal thoughts. It was very heavy. I was doing everything myself up until a year ago. I still had a full time job. I was newly married. Then there was the pandemic, and it took a really heavy toll, um, to the point where I was sort of like, something's going to give. Either my marriage is going to end, or I've got to quit my full time job, or I have to close the doors on this new business, which is truly a passion. Um, yeah, it was
What
really
was your
hard.
full-time job back then?
So I was still doing full time nannying. I used to be a nanny in
Okay.
the music industry, which is why I moved to Nashville initially. Um, but then I just continued nannying for people even once I came off the road. So I was still a full time nanny at that point.
Yeah, wow. And you don't have to get into the details, but like, what were some of the things that were going on in your, not even just your marriage, but like your relationship with others? Was it just the sacrificing? Was it lack of time? What types of feelings were you having, and how were they impacting, or not you having, how were the things you were doing and the way you were feeling impacting those relationships?
Well, I mean, I'm the hard. We all are. I'm the hardest on myself more than anybody else
Hmm.
ever was. But I've always prided myself on being a great daughter, a great sister, a great friend. I'm the one people call to just vent to and pour their heart out to, or to share exciting news with. And I felt like I was a bad friend. Um, but at that point, most importantly, I felt like I was a horrible wife because my husband was just getting crumbs. I was giving all of my, take a piece of the pie. I was giving all the pie away to my full time job and to my new business. And then I was coming home and sort of giving this like empty plate full of crumbs to my husband, and was just like, here, love
Hmm.
me. Aren't I just the best thing ever? And, we used to have really regular date nights, and we had a lot of friends we would double date with. And we literally never had a single fight until we got married, like ever.
Hmm.
And we were together
Wow.
4 years before we got married. So it was a lot of, it was everything. We were fighting more. I wasn't seeing my friends, didn't have time for my friends, didn't have time for myself. I was burning the candle at both ends, barely sleeping. My eating habits weren't what they were before. So it was just, I mean, on literally every way that you can look at it, everything was suffering.
Yeah. No, I mean, I can relate and understand that. What what happened? So what I find happens to me when I get burnt out, which I'll call it burnout. You can
Yeah.
call it, something that's more suitable to you. But what I notice happens is I start almost like going through things, but like not paying attention to them. So, like the perfect example I can give you, I went last night. It's raining off and on all day today, but I recently bought a smoker. So I'm teaching myself how to smoke meat, and
Mm-hmm.
so I have a brisket that I was going to smoke. So I wanted to go get, some wood chips and all that stuff. So I go up to the Lowe's, and then I go to the grocery store, and I rode my scooter. I have a like stand-on scooter.
Those
And
are
so
so
I
fun.
rode, oh my God, I don't know. I do ride it for fun sometimes. And just like, oh, I'm gonna
Yeah.
go scooter for a little bit. But they're so fun. So I ride up there, get my groceries, get my wood chips, lock my scooter from the bike rack. I left my grocery bag there. And I rode my scooter all the way home, put my scooter down in the basement, in my storage unit where I charge it, come back up, and I'm like, where's the bag?
Oh my gosh.
Where would I have left it? And so then I'm like, did I leave it by the bike rack? So then I get my scooter back out. I go all the way back to the store, and it's thankfully still sitting there. But that's when I know, like, I've got too much going
Yeah.
on. When I do things like that, and then also, the negative thinking and the reinforcement of negative thoughts about myself, because things like that, I'm like, God, Nick, you're so stupid. You can't even remember to bring your grocery bag home that you just went all the way over there to get. Like stuff
Yeah.
like that. Those are my signs. So like the point of saying that though is like I don't always realize I'm there until I'm there. I don't.
Yeah.
It kind of like slowly gets me there. So in your experience, going through all of this with neatly balanced growing and your full time job and your relationship and your marriage, marriage and your relationships and all that stuff. Did you notice or that you were slowly getting into this place, and even with the the suicidal thoughts, or did you just wake up one day and realize, oh my God, I've like let everything go?
It was a little bit of both. I I back in college, a guy I dated in college, I can remember as though it happened yesterday, and this was literally like 20 years ago. Um, I remember very vividly being in the car with my at the time boyfriend and pulling over on the side of the road, and he just sort of looked. I was driving, and I pulled over on the side of the road, and he just sort of looked at me and was like, "What are you doing?" And I just got out of the car and walked around to the passenger side, and um, I said, "You have to drive." And he was like, "Why?" And I said, "Because if I keep driving, I already know the bridge. I'm going to drive this car off." Um,
Mm.
and even all these years later, it makes me super emotional because I'm like, how do you get to that point? Um, like, there has to be so many things that lead you to this point where you think the only answer is death. And around my birthday last year, I started having all of those thoughts again. And I had not dealt with those in 20 years. I started therapy, I started counseling and journaling years ago, which helped a lot. And last fall, when I started having all of these thoughts again, I was just like, okay, enough's enough. Like, something's got to give. You know, I recognize this and I know what's happening. But I also started having,
Thank God you had the wherewithal too to recognize like this isn't right. Because I think
yeah,
a lot of people don't, and that's hard.
well, and I think it comes from all the work I've done the past 20 years to get
Yeah.
better in my mental health and all that. But I also started having, like you just said, I was forgetting things all the time. And dementia runs in my family, especially in the women. And so I got scared to death and was like, oh my gosh, do I have dementia? Like, I'm really scared about this. And I just was sort of like, should I go see a doctor? Should I get tested? Like, this is really starting to scare me. I'm forgetting things that my husband tells me. I'm forgetting like where I'm supposed to
Hmm.
be at a certain time. I'm forgetting things at home that I normally would just instantly grab and take with me. It was a lot of that. But then sort of the like eek, put the brakes on was I went in November for my just annual checkup with my dermatologist, which I have had for years. And she does a whole exam and she's like, everything looks fine. Is there anything, that you're concerned about? And again, just call it woman's intuition. And I just was like, honestly, it's probably nothing, but I'm here. I already have this very uncomfortable gown on. I might as well just show you. And I said, it's just this like little tiny freckle on my left leg, like right above my knee on my left, like outer thigh. And I said, honestly, I wouldn't even bring this up and mention it, except that my husband and I have friends with pools. And I said, I was at the pool literally every single weekend all summer long, and I never noticed this little freckle. And I've just noticed it in the past few weeks. So I was like, will you just look at it? So she starts looking at it, and I'm just talking to her nurse. And about 5 minutes later, she still has not stood back up. And she's got her little magnifying glass, and she's like contorting herself into a pretzel, looking at my little like spot. And I was like, what are you doing? I'm starting to get nervous. And
Hmm.
she says, it's not enough for me to tell you it's nothing. So I'd like to go ahead and just razor it off while you're here. If you're okay with that, it'll take 2 seconds. You won't feel a
Yeah.
thing, whatever. And I'm like, sure. So they do it. They send me home. And she sort of pats my back and she's like, honestly, I don't think you have anything to worry about. This is just like a super, super precautionary thing. And I'm like, okay. Well, she calls me a week to the day later and the doctor actually calls. And when the doctor calls, it's not good.
Never good.
And I remember exactly where I was. I was driving on the street in Nashville and she calls and she's like, can you talk? And I was like, sure.
Wait, when was this again? I'm sorry.
This was a week to the day after I had been in the doctor's office. This was last November, it's 6 months ago in
Oh,
November.
okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's what I thought.
Yeah. So she goes, so it's melanoma and I've cleared my schedule. I need you to come in tomorrow for surgery. And I mean, I was like, wait, melanoma? Like you die from that. And she
Hmm.
goes, yeah. So I've, like I said, I need you to come in tomorrow morning. And I was like, I'm supposed to work. And like immediately my thought went straight to work. And that was when I was like, enough is enough. Something's got to give. I'm finding out I have melanoma. And my very first thought is, I'm supposed to work tomorrow. And I think in my mind, something snapped right then and there. And I was like, I'm done. I am done. My health is now on the line. This is God saying something's got to give and this is it. Like, I'm going to stop you if you're not going to stop yourself. And so I went in the next day, had the surgery. They did a 0.5 centimeter right, left, up and down of the tiny, I mean, this freckle was like invisible. And
Wow.
so now I have a 5-inch scar on my leg. They went all the way down to bone. They said they dug it out. I'm like, take the leg
So
if you
it
need
what?
it. I don't care.
So it was right. So it wasn't
Yeah.
just the freckle; it had been deeper into your
Well, they said
skin,
at the
or is that
time
precautionary?
it was precautionary. They did say at the
Okay.
time that it was just I forget all the terminology, but it was just the first layer of skin. But they said we want to go all the way to the bottom now that you have a family history of cancer. We want to be aggressive. And again, I just sort of
Hmm.
laughed and I was like, take my leg if you need it. I don't care. Just make me live. And right after that, literally the very next week, I went in for my OBGYN annual appointment and they were like, you're 41. You never got your mammogram last year. We need to do that. And for a lot of personal reasons, I decided I didn't want to go the mammogram route. So I went to a breast thermography place and had that done instead. They found a
What is
mass.
that?
Sorry.
What is that? The
So it's
breast.
basically where they base it off of your basal body temperature instead
Okay.
of shooting radiation into your body. It's just like a camera that takes a picture, but I'm probably butchering the definition of it, but it basically just the pictures come back and show you heat spots in your body, and they're able to tell the body temperature in that spot and what it should
Gotcha.
be. And apparently they base it off of the heat. And so they found this mass
Okay.
and they said you have to have a something done. It could be a biopsy, it could be we're not really sure, but it's something enough that it's concerning. So I mean, it was just like bam, bam, bam. So I went and had my first mammogram. They thought it was breast cancer, so I'm terrified about that. I have to go in to have all these other things run, and it ends up coming out that it's fine. But it was just again, it was all of that in a matter of like a 2 week span, and so I was
Well,
like,
you know what
enough.
I think is crazy about that too is like I mean this is proven, but like your body holds trauma, it holds
Yes,
stress in your
yes.
body, and there's like plenty of ways it can manifest. And I'm not
Hmm.
saying that this is because of that, but like
Oh, I do.
you're
100%.
yeah,
I think
okay.
it was the
Well,
stress.
it's not me to say it. You can say it. I can't say
Yeah.
it. Yeah, but
No, I completely was like, this is stress related, this is stress induced, this is all coming from all of the things that, all the balls I've been trying to juggle in the air for the past 4 years. And it just sort of all came crashing down.
wow.
So I left my full-time job. I did neatly balanced full time, just stepped away and literally did, I mean, I did neatly balanced, but I did nothing for 6 months other than my organizing business. And
Wow.
every single aspect of my life is better now. I'm closer with my family. My husband and I are great. I have regular girl nights with my friends. We might have wine, we might have lunch, we might have coffee, we might have a movie night. But like every part of my life is 1,000% better. Now that I have put my health first and my family first and myself first, like all the things that matter at the end of the day. And I think it was just a big wake up call to focus on what really matters instead of chasing down all of these things. That at the end of the day, it was really just about financial gain. I mean, at the end of the day, it was, well, this is paying my bills and this is enabling us to take
Right.
really great vacations and blah, blah, blah. And it was like, is it worth it? Like, is it worth it to constantly try and keep up with the Joneses if you're going to
No.
end up having melanoma? Like, no, it's
Right. I mean,
not. Easy
it's
answer. No, it's not.
no, it's not.
So this is I love hearing that you've got your friends back, your relationship, you're putting priorities in place. But while all of this was happening and you were sitting there and you're thinking about work, oh my God, I'm going to work. Oh my God, I got to go to work tomorrow. And your health is literally deteriorating, your physical health and your mental health. Um, what were some of those steps that you took to get to a place where you're feeling better now? Because I think what's really hard for people when they're in it, and you can probably agree or disagree, but I'm sure you agree, when you're in it sometimes, even if it seems obvious to someone who's not in it, it's just like, where do I start? What's the first step to sort of get myself back where I need to be mentally and then, of course, physically as well?
Sure. Yeah. Well, for me, a huge part of feeling and staying mentally healthy was working out,
Mm-hmm.
which, you know, using your leg is a big part of working out. And my doctor was like, absolutely no physical activity beyond walking for the foreseeable future. And, you
What?
know, I would go in after 6 weeks and I'm like, okay, like it's starting to heal. He's like, nope, it's not healed. Like you cannot do anything. So, I mean, long story short, I couldn't work out for 6 months. And so I do think that that definitely attributed to taking a toll on my mental health. I
Mm.
mean, just being able to go sprint and do a quick run at the gym or lift weights, which is what I enjoy doing. I love HIIT workouts. I mean, I do a little bit of everything. Some days it's just Pilates or yoga. Some days it's I run like a 7 minute mile. I mean, it's a little bit of everything,
Wow.
but I like to sprint. I like to do weights. I like to kind of mix it up. And I couldn't do any of that for 6 months. So
Wow.
on top of not feeling my strongest mentally and in my mental health spaces, I also gained a little bit of weight, which should be the least of my worries. But for someone who's always been like a size 2 to suddenly be a 4, I mean, I
It's a
felt
big
like a
deal.
whale. I mean, I was just like, oh my gosh, none of my clothes fit. I'm just so fat. And, you know, that obviously doesn't help, which then turned into, well, I used to just eat salads and a lot of, you know, really healthy like protein and stuff for dinner. And it was like, who cares if I eat half a bag of chips or if I eat a brownie and Sunday ice cream?
This is
Like,
where I'm at right now. I have to,
yeah,
I'm like, I'm eating chips today.
yeah. I mean, and you have to have a balance. I mean,
Yeah.
listen, we all have to have a cheat day here and there, but you know, it was just all these little things that all put together erupted. And so, yeah, I mean, I wasn't able to work out. So therefore I wasn't eating as healthy. And you know, again, it was just, again, little things here and there that added up to one big, huge thing. But I also think going through everything I went through 20 years ago, I was able, like I said earlier, I was able to see the signs. I was able to be like, wait, I'm a little bit depressed today. Um, and I immediately jumped back into journaling. I'm a big journaler, but you know, it would kind of be like once a month. And now I take 5 to 10 minutes every single day. I'm a Christian, so my relationship with God is always first and foremost. So I got back into being like, you know what? If I don't get to have that cup of coffee, I'm definitely going to have my devotion. I'm definitely going to journal. I'm definitely going to write out my feelings, good, bad, happy, sad. Um, my mom and I have always been really close, but I called her. I probably owe her like something pretty massive for all the phone calls she took from me like 14 times a day, just like, Mom. Um, and then my dad's best friend has been a second dad to me since, I mean, my whole life, but ever since my dad passed away. And I always half jokingly, but mostly seriously, tell people that he and Jesus are like this. I'm like, I'm pretty sure Jesus calls Gary to like ask questions and check
Get
in.
some advice.
And yeah. So I was texting, you know, my second dad multiple times a week and I'm like, okay, today's prayer request, can you please just pray about this? Just that's all I have for today. And then the next day I'd be like, hey, I'm really struggling with this. Can you please pray for this? And you know, I always say if there's anyone that can get a prayer to God's ears, it's that man. So he got a lot of phone calls and a lot of texts too. But yeah, it was, you know, my husband thankfully was patient with all that I had going on. So yeah,
Were
I mean,
you
it was
able
just
to
a huge,
share it with him? Like, or were you guys, were
yeah.
you able to, okay, share these feelings you were having with him when you were having, you know, the suicidal thoughts and ideations and all of that stuff? Is he, yeah,
I
or
mean,
did
when
you
it
keep it to
comes to stuff
yourself?
like that, even my mom asked me a couple of times, you know, are you struggling with that? And I was like, absolutely not. I'm fine. So when it came to the suicidal thoughts, no, like there was no one that knew other than the pages of my journal. I didn't talk to anybody about that until I was sort of over it and past it and was like, yeah, I was really struggling. You know, I'm surprised you didn't see that. but everything else, yes, I talked to everybody
Good.
about everything.
Good, good. And what was obviously I think that journaling is a good thing. I don't I need to get back into journaling more myself. I do like quick little thoughts and
Yeah.
that like throughout the day and that helps kind of in real time. But how do you journal? Do you just throw your feelings out? Do you have any structure to it? Do you, you know,
Every
write
day is
down?
different.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, there
okay.
are days where it's just one line, like you said. It's today I feel happy, or today I'm really struggling. Other
Yeah.
days it's, talks about who we organized for and what we did that day at their house and how great it felt to come out with, 12 trash bags full of donations. Like, and then other days it's, my husband and I had a really great date night last night. Here's where we went. This is what we had, like, blah, blah, blah. I mean, every single day the journal entries look different.
Yeah.
But I think that's what makes it helpful is that this is what I'm feeling right now. And right now, whether it's gratitude or sadness or a high or a low, I'm just very honest.
I think that's the best way to do it. I feel like there's a lot of guided journals. I even wrote and published one myself, right? But I think a lot of times journaling becomes it's almost like you procrastinate. Like if you're someone who wants to journal, you almost procrastinate if you haven't done it or you haven't built the practice of doing
Yeah,
it because it seems like it's a big thing and you're not really sure what to expect necessarily or how it's going to make you feel. But the way I think about it, that's been helpful for me is one is sometimes I need the structure. Two is a lot of I ask myself the whys about a lot of it. So if I'm feeling happy or I'm feeling great gratitude or whatever that is, I really try to go a layer deeper and think, well, why am I gracious for this person? Why am I happy today?
hmm
Why am I sad today? Because that's where I feel like I can actually like click into something as opposed to just getting my feelings out. But what I find interesting about you saying like, oh, sometimes I just, write about what happened at work or even that date night or something, and you're almost like recapping events. But the reason that that's what's coming out of you is because you need to get that out. And I think a
Yes,
lot of time what happens at least for me, is there's so much going on in my brain, and a lot of them are like contradicting each other or fighting for space in my mental capacity. And even getting out the simple things, like they don't need to be in there. Like, oh, I just cleaned out 13 trash bags or however many you had said. Like getting that out and writing it down, it's just making space for the things that you need to think about or that you want to think about, but it's still in there until you can get it out.
for sure. Well, and that's something my therapist had told me to do years ago when I started back to therapy. And she actually encouraged me to write a book. And she said it doesn't have to be a book. It could be a letter or whatever, but she really helped encourage me to get out things that I had gone through many years ago that also no one knew about, in addition to all the suicidal thoughts and feelings I used to have. And so I've actually almost finished a book that I've been writing for the past 4 years. And that's kind of how that started. Was it started where I would just write out, just sort of reminiscing and reliving memories all the way from my childhood to now. And it was the same kind of, I guess, concept with that. Was today, this is what I'm thinking about. Tomorrow, the next day it was, I'm remembering this memory from high school, or I'm remembering, this boy that broke my heart, or whatever, whatever it was. I would just write about it. And sometimes it was half a page, sometimes it was 12 pages. But it just, yeah, getting those feelings out and getting those thoughts out is so therapeutic in so many ways. I wish
Oh, it
everybody
is.
would do that, honestly.
No, I think so too. And ironically, my therapist told me to write a book and said it would be very healing as well,
Yeah,
like probably like a year and a half ago now. And I actually started doing it.
that's
I,
incredible.
yeah, I just remember there was, especially like my growing up, I had a pretty big realization of something that I hadn't thought about while I was writing this out. And I do a lot of almost like, what did they call that when people are like, tape recording themselves. What is that called?
Like a self-recording
Yeah, like I would actually pull up my
or
phone and
confession.
maybe like I would actually talk into my phone instead of write sometimes because it
hmm
made it easier for me to get it out. And I had a pretty big realization too about some of the stuff that I internalized as a kid just from writing it out and being like, okay, how was I feeling? Why was I feeling this way at 5 years old? What were the pressures that I was putting on myself? Was I putting them on me or were other people putting them on me? Stuff
Right.
like that. Because I think that you're the oldest, right?
I
You're older
am.
than your sister. Okay. I think as the oldest, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this too. As the oldest, like I put a lot of pressure on myself to like, and my parents divorced when I was young. So I put a lot of pressure on myself to like, oh, I have to make sure my sisters are okay, even though I was like 2 years older than them. Like I have to make sure my sisters are okay. I will, if, mom or dad is mad, I don't know. Like I had all these things in my head and I put
Yeah.
all these unrealistic pressures on myself that it was like
Guilty.
my, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so
Same.
yeah. I think, and so I think what that does is that puts this sort of, I don't know if it's really perfectionism, but there is this element of like, oh, I've got to be brave, I've got to be tough, I've got to put on the brave face for
Yeah.
these things, and then you end up repressing as a kid. You're repressing emotions, and kids should be emotional. That's why that Inside Out movie and Inside Out 2 is so successful, because to teach kids about emotions. And so I think like there's something to that too, where like
Hmm.
you can as an, and it doesn't even have to be the oldest, but like as a child, you're just repressing your emotions for one reason or another, and then you never get to really experience them or make sense of them or understand the why behind them.
Oh, totally. And yeah, I think everything that you said is spot on. I didn't necessarily feel like I had to take care of my sister because, like I said, my parents were married until the day my
Yeah,
dad
yeah.
died, and we had a pretty idealistic childhood. But part of why I started going back to therapy was a really tumultuous relationship where I found out the guy had lied to me about like his entire life. But by starting therapy for that, it brought up all of this, like the fact that before I was 30 years old, I had lost my dad, all four of my grandparents, my uncle, and a cousin who's older than me, and then most tragically, my youngest cousin to an accidental drug overdose. So it's like I had all this loss before I even turned 30, and it was never put on me by anyone else. It was very self-imposed, but I always, to your point, put it on myself. That was like, you don't cry, you don't show emotion, you be the strong one, you be there for everybody else. And I remember distinctly after losing my cousin in 2015 to a drug overdose, I didn't cry. Like from the time I found out she died, through the funeral, through the trip, flight, all that to be there. And I just remember my now husband, at the time we were just dating, and I can remember getting back from that trip and calling him. And I mean, this is probably how a lot of people deal with things, but I've always been like a good girl, grew up Christian, grew up in a Christian home, like never did anything quote unquote bad. And I remember calling him and saying, I just want to go drink until I forget. And even he was like, okay. And I got back in town. We went and had a few drinks and we walked into his apartment. And when I tell you I sobbed like I've never sobbed in my life, except for when my dad passed away. I mean, it was like the slow, dramatic, like slide down the wall of the floor kind of thing. I cried and I cried and I cried and I cried and I cried. And it wasn't until a couple of days after that that I was like, I wasn't only crying for her, I was crying for every single person that's died in the past 6 years that I never really got to cry over because I was just so busy being strong for everybody else that no one even asked me to do. No one was like, you better be
Mm.
strong. I was the one saying that.
It's
And
these things that you impose on
crying is so
yourself.
therapeutic too.
I don't like it. It never feels good to me, but I get it.
Oh,
I think it should. Yeah, it
yeah.
should. It should be.
I feel like it should be a required like act every week. It's like everybody needs to cry once every week.
Yeah, that's a fair ask or fair point. So when you're sitting there though, and you just had all of this years and years of loss and everything, it's a coping mechanism. It's not healthy, but it's a coping mechanism to repress. And by the way, it's also, I realized this is a toxic trait of mine quite recently, that when I'm not doing well mentally, really, I find myself, one, I withdraw from everything. And then two, I actually start reaching out to other people that I think might not be okay. And it's like, what a weird, because it's like this natural instinct to help people.
Mm-hmm.
And that there's people that have it worse. There's people that have it worse. So it's almost like this weird way to almost invalidate yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
No, I get
totally,
that.
yeah, totally. But you recognize it, right? You've recognized that you were doing this. You can look back on it now, and the fact that you were able to kind of recognize, because of your experience previously in your late 20s, to recognize that you were kind of in this place that you shouldn't have been in 6 months ago or whatever, is also, I mean, imagine if you didn't have that past history, you would have never
Oh,
been
I
able to
know.
really identify that.
Yeah, I think of people every day, both celebrities you hear about in the news, and even just, people down the street here in my own neighborhood who commit suicide every week. And I just think, man, if only they, had the tools that I had. And it's something I'm very passionate about now. I mean, I definitely want to be an advocate for mental health. I'd get involved when I can. I know someone here who actually goes to church with me who has her own nonprofit that's mental health. And, my business supported and donated to their like annual fundraiser last year. I mean, so any way that I can get involved to bring more awareness and to help people who are struggling, I want to, I try to.
Mm-hmm.
It's not talked about enough for sure.
No, it's not. What is the main thing that you would say to someone now that I don't want to say you're on the other side, because I don't think we ever actually get to the other side. We just get closer to it. What's something that you would say to someone can relate to all of those feelings you've had of feeling burnt out, things manifesting in physical illness, relationships being damaged? And even before that, if you want to, I know you had a friendship that was a very long friendship that recently had to end. So like, how do you, like, what advice would you give to someone who is feeling like you were feeling, to kind of help them get started on a journey to heal and grow?
Well, the only person that ever has problems with boundaries are people who don't have any boundaries. So first and foremost, I would tell people struggling, create boundaries. And who cares what anyone else thinks? If they get their feelings hurt, that's on them, not you. And
seriously, it is that simple.
Yeah. I always say I'm a recovering perfectionist, but I mean, I would tell anybody I was a doormat until about 2 years ago. I just never told anyone no. I was always like, what can I do to help? I'm over here like suffering and miserable, but as long as you're happy, everything's great. I'm thrilled. Give me more on my plate. It's fine. And someone told me just before I turned 40, and it's so funny. I'm not a big cusser. I don't really use bad language on the regular, but I had a friend tell me, she said, when you turn 40, you're give a damn bust. And I was like, all I could think about was the 90s country song by Jody Messina, because Jody Messina was a country singer back in the 90s, and she had a song called My Give a Damn's Busted. And I was just like, what? Like, what are you talking about? And she just said, I don't know. It's like a light switch. You turn 40 and you just stop caring what anyone else thinks. And I was like, oh, that'll never be me. I'm always worried about everybody else. And right around the time I turned 40, I wouldn't say that I don't care. I'll always care. Yeah. But I started putting up these boundaries. And it was really hard at first because everybody was sort of like, wait, what? You're saying no? You're backing away? You're not going to come to this event? You're not going to be a part of this? You're not going to come home for the holiday or whatever? And I was just like, that doesn't suit me. No, like I'm not. I'm not going to do this or that. And, it was hard, and it's still hard to this day. But having boundaries is so important for my mental health. And I think for most people's mental health, that's first and foremost. I'm like, get those boundaries in check. And if you have to make a list, if you have to write a letter, if you have to send an email, you have to have a conversation over coffee, like whatever it is, if someone isn't respecting the boundaries that you're putting in place, they have no place in your life. Like, just absolutely, they just don't.
And if you allow them to disrespect your boundaries, you're just giving them a recommendation, not setting a boundary.
100%. Yes.
I heard someone say that a while ago, and I'm like, that's good. I gotta
that's really good. Yeah. But also just reach out to people. There's people in my life who know that about my struggles in the past, and we don't even talk every year, but they know who they are. And I've reached out multiple times and said, hey, I'm struggling again today. And they're always there. I always know that they will be there. And I think everyone needs a person like that in their life. Again, it doesn't have to be your best friend, doesn't have to be your family member, doesn't have to be someone you talk to all the time, but you need to have someone that you trust, that you can just, again, reach out to when you're struggling, who can help you. That's very important.
When you reach out to them, what do they like say, or what is it that's so comforting to you?
Just honestly, very little has to be said. It's just, okay, I'm praying right now. Or, okay, where do you want to meet? Or, okay, do you want to come over? Or, okay, do you want to call me, let's talk.
Yeah.
They offer whatever it is they can offer in that time. And it just, I don't know, just that knowledge of it's someone that's been there, that's been down that path, that gets it, is just worth its weight in gold. Because so many people are like, oh, I'm so sorry. But they've never been there. They don't understand it. They don't get it. And so the words, as sweet and meaningful as they may be, they just kind of fall flat and they sound hollow. So to know that it's someone that's like, no, you know what? I actually contemplated ending my life. I get it. Call me anytime you need. There's just something to that matters more than anything anyone else can say.
Yeah, I get that. I had a friend that on probably the worst day of my life, but got a few of those. But I remember what she said to me that was the most grown up thing that I've ever heard come out of the mouth of someone. And she was like, what do you need from me right now?
Yes.
And it was like, oh, and this was like, I didn't even know how to respond because nobody's ever said that to me before. And I froze up, and she was like, do you want me to listen? Do you want to just sit here? Do you want me to go? Do you need to go? And just started like giving me like food for thought and things to think about. And, eventually I was able to say, like, I just really want to go for a walk. And then it was like, do you want me to come with you? Do you need to be out by yourself? And I was like, I would actually like it if you came with me. And it was just like this, horrible. This was like right when I was getting divorced, lost my job, all hell broke loose, and like everything fell. And I just remember like, I don't know if I would have made it through that week if I didn't have that kind of support in that moment. And so what I've tried to really learn from that. And when someone does come to me, or I want to be there for someone that I see is struggling, in a lot of cases, you want to help, but a lot of people don't know how, or they feel like the best way to relate to you is to share a story about themselves, or the best way to relate to you is to give you advice. And I'm guilty. I think we're all guilty of doing those things.
Oh, for sure.
But when you're in crisis, or you're in a place where you don't even really know what you want, or feel hopeless, just having a person who will sit there and say, what do you need from me? How can I help you? And that's not let me know if you need anything, because that's a very different thing.
Yeah.
Let me know if you need anything. Peace. Yeah. Right. Well, I need you to ask me what I need right now, or how you can help me right now. That's what I need. So I do think that everybody should have someone like that. And just remember, it's like, it's okay to reach out, and it's not always that someone might not always be available that you want to reach out to. And that's okay too. But like, you've got to have those people in your life, because otherwise you're just isolated and alone. And then you stew in your own juices of negativity, of these feelings of, suicidal thoughts, or self-harm, or hopelessness, or loneliness, or any of these things. And I just would really encourage people to, and you know what I think this is a hard thing to say and understand. And I think we've all been here too, but if you don't have that person in your life, you might want to like reevaluate some things, reevaluate some relationships and some friendships, and find out if they're still suiting you or not.
That's a huge part of why I want to start doing more speaking and traveling. And I'll talk to anybody anywhere, but I really want to do more speaking at high schools and colleges, just because that's when my struggles started, and I felt very alone at that point in my life. And I felt very like, we're young and no one has any real problems. So no one really wants to hear about mine, because everybody's just, falling in love for the first time and drinking for the first time, or sorority, or whatever it is they're into, and I just, it's not lost on me that there are far too many people in this world who do not have anyone to talk to. That's a big reason why I'm trying to get more into the speaking world, because I always say, if me sharing hard and difficult or tragic things from my past, and there's so much more we could dive into that I've gone through, but I'm like, if one person has dealt with even just one of these things, I want you to feel seen and heard and important and cared about and loved. And if no one's ever told you that, let me be the first. And whether it's through a DM on Instagram or if it's on a stage in front of 50,000 people or if it's over coffee at Starbucks, like I want to have those conversations and I want to listen and be there for people who don't feel like anyone is there for them. Because I've been there too.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. And I think that what is so endearing about that is that a lot of people need to hear that, and they just need to know that there's someone relating or someone
Yeah.
they can relate to.
Yeah.
And that's what I found. That's like what I have found so hard when I was growing up as a male and hiding my depression and my mental health struggles and all of that stuff before finally sharing them with people. And a lot of people just, as unfair as it is, there's just not space in the life or the people they have in their life where they can be honest and be open about that stuff. So I
Yeah.
think you helping people create that space is really good. It's a really good way to give back to those who are less fortunate.
Yeah. I hope so.
Yeah. I know you probably do too, but like I find myself, I don't know, it's so weird. I find myself in these conversations a lot more than I used to be. And I think that's a good thing. Not even just like the podcast, yes, but like in real life too. I find
Yeah.
more and more people being open with stuff.
Definitely. Yeah. And the more I have opened up about stuff I've struggled with in the past, um, I was, just to put it out there, I was sexually assaulted by a boyfriend in my teen years. And it was something I never told anyone about until about 10 or 11 years ago, actually at my grandmother's funeral. um, and it was something that I felt very stigmatized by and somehow felt like it was my fault and I was to blame. And, it was just this huge secret I carried around. And the more I've started talking about it, everyone has a story, whether it was, sexual assault or whether, it was something else in their life, some sort of traumatic event. We all have been there. And that's not what makes us unique. There's a million other things that make us unique, but that's something that almost everyone has gone through. And I hate how stigmatized it still is and how little it is still talked about to this day. I'm like, we've got the Harvey Weinsteins and we've got the Jeffrey Epstein and we've got all these people, and we're still not talking about the fact that it happens in, our hometown and in our high schools and in our colleges. And I'm baffled by that.
I am too. I'm baffled we don't talk about it. I'm baffled it still happens so often and so frequently, and that there's so many young people that are more or less exposed to these assaults, and it's not something you can even report. I just don't get it. I can't even.
Yeah.
I'm very sorry that you went through that and that you have been through a lot of the stuff that you've been through and the feelings that you've been feeling. It's not easy. That's for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, what's behind you? I forgot to ask at the beginning. You said that you wanted to... Yeah.
I'm not just a complete slob. So Neatly Balanced has grown and expanded, and now I have a team of people that work with me and help me. And in 2024, we expanded into consignment closet sales. It's something that clients have asked us to do literally since day one. They're like, what do you do with all the stuff that you get from people? And I always say, well, we donate it. And when people find out that we've worked for high profile or just maybe not even famous people, but just people who live in a gated neighborhood or have designer clothes, they're just like, you just donate this stuff, you should sell it. And I was like, that kind of defeats the whole purpose of our mission and the everything, the meaning and everything behind our name. And so for several years, I just sort of tried to brainstorm and talk to people smarter than I am about, hey, how do we incorporate this? Like, is there a way to do something to give people the opportunity to purchase things that they may want either from a certain person that they love and they idolize, if it's famous, or if it's just a really great deal on a pair of designer shoes? Like, what do we do? Yeah. So we expanded into consignment closet sales, and we had our first one this spring. And when I tell you, as someone who doesn't have kids, it felt like my baby. I mean, I was just like, please love this. Please think it's as special as I think it is. And I was terrified. And we had a line down the sidewalk 30 minutes before we were supposed to even start, of people waiting to get in. And we had people who were shopping like 2.5 hours after it ended and begging us to open a brick and mortar store. And I was just
Oh
like,
my gosh.
wow. So this is,
You're
we're
back on the
gearing.
path to burnout if you keep going into
I
this
know,
way.
right? But I have help now, so it's not all on me.
Yeah.
But it's nine, you can't see them all, but it's 9 racks, clothing
Wow.
racks that are completely full of clothes that we've been busy tagging and pricing because we're having our second big consignment sale in September. So
That's
we're
awesome.
gearing up
Well,
for that.
congratulations on that. And I'm glad that I remembered to ask you about that. And
Thank you.
what I want to ask you now too is, how are you going to keep your mental and physical health neatly balanced while you're growing your business and finding new opportunities to do so with the consignment, God, I can't even say it, consignment
Consignment.
sales? Yeah. How are you going to keep yourself level and manage your mental health and physical health?
It goes back to boundaries. I mean, everything in my life, honestly, every facet of my life is set up with a boundary at this point. And I've honestly never been more proud of the work I've done on myself, um, than probably where I am right now. And, just how hard I have fought mentally and physically, to get here. But, yeah, it goes back to boundaries. Every morning, I do not do anything before 9 a.m. in terms of like scheduling anything. I'm usually up usually by 6 every day. I go work out 5 days a week. I do something. Sometimes we
Mm-hmm.
live in a pretty big neighborhood with lots of hills. So sometimes it's just a super brisk walk. If we walk our entire neighborhood, it's about a mile and a half. So sometimes I just get up and walk. Sometimes with my husband, sometimes it's just me, sometimes with my dog. Um, but sometimes I just walk. Other days I have a fitness app that I work out with. Shout out to Carrie Underwood. Thank you, Fit 52. Um, I do this fitness app a couple times a week, and then I try to go to the gym at least 3, sometimes 4 days a week, and do like an actual hour-long hard workout. And then I
Mm-hmm.
go to the sauna and the steam room after for about
God,
20
those
to
are
30 minutes.
so good for you too.
Yeah. Yeah. So every single day starts with a devotion. Right now, I'm going through a book by Shauna Niequist, who is one of my favorite authors. I've read every single book she's ever written. She's a Christian author. She writes a lot of books that can sort of be used as a book that you read and a devotion
Mm.
with like really short, quick chapters. So I do a short devotion every day, and then I journal, and then I follow that up with a workout so that nothing else, whether it's work related or personal appointments or anything, nothing happens before 9 a.m. And on the brief times that it
Good
has
for
to,
you.
I just shift it and I do whatever has to be done super early. And then I end my day with the workout and the, prayer time and the devotion and all that. So my
It's
husband and I
protecting
both
your
have put,
peace.
yeah, it brings
Yeah.
so much peace. I'm in a much better place. My husband and I have both kind of dedicated one night every week and one entire day every week where neither of us work ever. I've been asked by multiple people and I'm like, no, I won't do it on these times.
Good
It's
for you.
marriage time. We have like a date night, or we'll go to a friend's house to their pool, or we'll just sit at our back deck and watch the deer. I mean, it's just, we just have time together to sort of talk and focus and, prioritize our marriage. I try to go home every 2 to 3 months to North Carolina and spend time with my mom. She's getting older and she's super active and acts like she's 40, but the truth is she is getting older. And so I try to go home and spend time with her, my sister, and my niece, who like is the sun and the moon and the stars in my life. We get together as much as we can too. And yeah, I prioritize family, um, before friendships or anything else. But I do also try to prioritize my friendships, and I'm very intentional in reaching out to my girlfriends, and just whether it's a, hey, how are you? Or, hey, how is this thing that you were dealing with last week? Is it better now?
Mm-hmm.
How's your marriage? How's your job? How are your kids? Whatever. And then, yeah,
Important
also
stuff.
having girl time where we get together and spend time together every few weeks too. It's good.
Good. It sounds like you've really built something that's a little bit more sustainable for yourself and hiring help
Yes.
for your
Yeah.
business as well. Good. Good. So I think that's a good place for us to, well, shoot, I forgot. So I have to give you the chance to ask me anything. So I'll give you that, even though we talked for like an hour the other day, and I think you probably asked me a lot there as we were catching up. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'll turn it over to you to ask me anything, and then we'll get wrapped up.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I asked you all of my Nick Lachey questions the first time I was on. But I feel like at this point we have like a friendship. I mean, I appreciate that we check in with each other periodically and talk. And um, I mean, my question now is just like from a personal standpoint, like, how are you? How are you feeling? I know you've done so much. You've started You Can, and you've gone through a divorce, and you've started this podcast. Like, how are you feeling personally and professionally? And I guess on a lighter note, like kind of like a two-part question is, what are you looking forward to?
Well, how am I feeling? In the interest of honesty, I am very tired. Um, that's not really something that I've actively said to describe myself often in my life. It's one of those things um, I don't, I get tired, right? We're human beings, but like
Sure.
I go from a mile a minute taking on more and more stuff to like completely burnt out
Yeah.
at that, or at least that's how it feels to me, right? Like I was saying earlier. So like right now, the grocery bag and the wood chip story and stuff like that, or as you said earlier, like I'll leave and I'll be like, where did I put my wallet? And I have like specific places that I put stuff. And when it's not in like my wallet, for example, isn't in one of those places, that's a sign. So like lately I've just been really tired. There's been
Yeah.
a lot going on in my work. There's been a lot going on in podcasting. I recently took over producing my podcast all by myself. I have a second YouTube only podcast once a week. And then I have UCAN and I have all these other projects I set myself up for. So I'm tired, but it's soon to be next week. I'm on vacation and I'm not actually going to be doing any podcasting. I'm not going to be doing any work. I'm not going to be doing anything but kind of recharging and refilling my cup. So I
Yeah.
hope that I can start to kind of be less tired and, mentally fatigued as I've been feeling, where I'm forgetting my groceries at the, bike rack or not able to. I mean, it's just funny. It's like I say that and I'm like, but this is the sign. This is what happens to me. And this is where I know I've got to pump the brakes a little bit or I'm going to just completely lose any sense of productivity. But what am I looking forward to? I'm looking forward to said time off as
Yes.
well. But the other thing that I'm really looking forward to is, and we're kind of in the middle of summer, but I love being outside on my rooftop. And it's raining today, but what I'm really looking forward to is the next time I can get up there and watch a sunset because
Oh,
they're beautiful. And it is, I was up there earlier this week and it was a nice one, but I kept myself up there for like 15 minutes just because I was giving myself like, I have too much to do. Right. So I think getting that next sunset when I'm up there and I don't have anything to do and I'm not distracting myself with work or whatever that is, I'm really looking forward to that because those kind of like help level set my mind and relax
yeah.
my mind.
I feel you on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I get it.
So tired. It's the weekend though, so that's nice.
Yeah.
I'm gonna smoke some meat, get better at that. Which, by the way, I saw this funny meme. I told everyone. So I bought myself this smoker for my birthday, right? And so I was like, I'm just gonna. And I know you don't eat meat, right?
No,
No. So this is probably.
I've been
I
a
don't know if this is
pescatarian since 2009.
okay. Well, I can smoke some salmon. Do
Yes,
that too.
I
So
do
when
eat
I
fish.
what I'm like really thinking this is a cool hobby to learn. And then I see this meme that was like a woman asking, hey, where are all the single men in their 30s hanging out? And then the answer was, or at home playing video games or learning how to smoke meat. And
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, I thought this was so cool and such a like individual thing. And apparently all the men in their 30s are learning how to smoke meat. So it's not even that cool. So anyway.
But if it makes you happy, that's all that matters.
We'll see how the brisket turns out, because that'll make me happy or I'll be really sad. But the good news is I got it from the farmer's market. So I love the farmer's market here.
Yes, I do too. I love it. We have a great one here.
Oh, you do? In Nashville? Like proper?
Yes.
Oh,
it's
nice.
Huge. It's like it's a city block. It's big.
I love those. Those are the ones I like, the really big ones.
Yeah.
So cool. Well, where can people get in touch with you on social and your website and all of that? And we'll put those links down there, but I just want people to know where they can find you.
Yeah. So we are on LinkedIn, which that sounds like out of date, but we still get a lot of interaction on that. So we keep it up, but we're on LinkedIn, TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram at Neatly Balanced. And then we have a website. It's neatly-balanced.com. You can email me at Kristy@neatly-balanced.com. I didn't really mention much about this when we talked about it. It's in the first episode, but we do travel nationwide, and we currently have clients in 6 states. So I was just in California in March and again in April. I'm going, or I guess February and March. I'm going back out there in, I think it's September. We're going to be in Vegas in August. So we travel nationwide. So if you need organizing services and you would like us to come, you can reach out. We'd love to work with you.
That's awesome. I
and
knew
for sure,
you were
if you
traveling.
Yeah,
I didn't know
yeah,
you were
we
still
traveled
doing
since day
that.
one.
That's awesome. I remember you doing that. I didn't know you were still doing that. So that's cool. Very cool.
I mean, I love to travel personally, so it's nice when we can turn a work trip into like a personal trip at the end or at the beginning. So that's good too.
Yeah.
I was also going to say, if anyone is struggling with mental health stuff, please reach out. I would love to talk to you and be there for you.
That's very kind of you. Links for all of that are below. And thanks again for coming on. This was good catching up with you and learning about, like I said, and I'll sum it up on this. Like I said on the phone the other day, I'm like, you would think after launching Neatly Balanced and how successful it became, like from the last podcast, it was like, off to the races, your life is set. And I think that a lot of times we think we know what we're going for, or what's going to, make us happy. And sometimes that very thing can send you on a path that you thought you were past, or a path that maybe you didn't expect to be on. So I really appreciate you sharing
Thank you.
part 2 of your story with Neatly Balanced and who you are and who you're becoming.
Thank you. And I like that you said that, who I'm becoming, because I don't feel like any of us ever arrive. I feel like there's always a new chapter to our story. And you kept saying it was a character arc. And I'm like, yeah, it's kind of like a life arc. I just feel like every year or a few months, something else gets thrown your way. And it's like, whoa, didn't see that curveball coming. But you just try to swing and
that's it.
Keep going.
The reality TV thing, I swear to God, it's like, I thought I was done a year and a half ago with all of it. And then I was like, oh my God, that was chapter 1. That was chapter 1. And now, with UCAN and all of the work there and all the activism and stuff, I'm like, I'm in the middle of my fucking story. I'm not at the end like I thought. So I agree with you. And I think, we're all works in progress, and we'll have good days and bad days, and we're imperfect as humans, and that's okay. We should embrace it and learn from it.
Yeah.
So
100%.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us on this week's episode of Eyes Wide Open. If you enjoy the show, the best way to support us is by sharing or dropping a review. For more information and content, check out engagewithnick.com or find me on Instagram at nthompson513. Don't go through life blind. Do the work so you can show up in the world with your eyes wide open.